Good afternoon, everyone. How are you all doing? Yeah, how's the chai? Chai is good. The snacks are pretty good as well. So thank you again for being here. I'm Nazira. I usually host these monthly Chai and Just Chat sessions. This is our 11th session. So before I forget, you're all welcome to attend our anniversary celebration on August 11th, which will be our 12th month launch of the Chai and Just Chat. And I would love for your presence to be here. This is time for dance. Can we shut the door, Rajanji? Yeah, thank you. So, well, obviously you thought we were coming for a dance class, right? So, today's session is on journalism. And what we're going to discuss today is about several stuff on journalism, about communication. We're going to talk about, let me just get this, hold on. Usmanji, everybody is waiting for you to help us out here. We'll let you know when we're ready to dance.
Maybe they can invite us over there.
They can invite us over there, or we can invite them over here. But Usman is going to help us with getting the logistics straight. I thought this was the...
They can increase the volume.
They can increase the volume. Okay. So today we're going to discuss about journalism, number one. Number two, we're going to talk about the implication of misinformation and the wrongful information that is being rotated out there. And also we're going to talk about what is the future of journalism and the past, the present, and the future, right? And the agenda for today is the panel discussion, then we go into a break after you ask some questions, and then we bring two young journalists as well to talk about the practical implications of what it means to be a new generation journalist, right? And we would like to thank the panelists for being here and you as well. And in the interest of time, you will see the panelists' bio rotating on the PowerPoint right there. And what I'm going to introduce them very briefly, but definitely you'll get some time to know who each panelists are. But from my right, we have Andy. And Andy and I know each other probably from past 4 or 5 years. He is our health journalist. And I get a lot of information that we miss out on everyday basis through Andy. And thank you so much for being here, Andy. Nidia is someone I got introduced to recently. She is a community journalist, citizen journalist. So I'm also learning these words. She's a citizen journalist, but a very good one. And she came with huge reference as a great champion for the community. So Nidia, thank you so much for being here and supporting us. Parthiv, as most of you all know him, doesn't need much introduction, but is the chief and editor for the Khabar magazine, which is a local Indian publication that goes out monthly, and has been a good a mentor, a friend, and I always call him a composed editor, and does a good job at what he does. And Frida is someone whom I know from the past 1 or 2 years, and Frida wears several hats, and as you'll see from her bio, and also as she speaks, but I usually call her a community advocate and uses various mediums to speak about issues. And Taya, I'm so surprised that you have such a wonderful admin in your office. It's sometimes through the admins that you get to know people, and once you know the admin, you know how the boss is, right? So if I'm really giving good words and kudos to the admin, you can see how much Taya has kept her really good and happy. And so Taya is the GPB, Georgia Public Broadcasting Director or CEO and CEO and editor, and I guess she makes the final decisions. So, and thank you so much, Taya, for being here this evening. And Sonia Kamal is a friend I met recently. She was at our last Chai and Chat session as like probably 2 months ago. And we met for coffee, and I was impressed with what she was doing. And I felt that's a new way of journalism, which is also about writing books, because I think journalism is getting the information out in different mediums. So we'll talk about that as well. And Vikas is someone whom I know from 3 or 4 years, is a kind, good at heart a person, and does various stuff. One of the main thing he does is social media journalism, getting the facts out. So that's what he does. And Gina is from the Telemundo television. She's the news director. So thank you for taking the time to being here, Gina. Thank you. And you will not miss any of their bios, which is very detailed and available. And you're welcome to get their contact information right after our chai and chat, and they'll be staying here for some time. So that's our agenda today. The restrooms are through the double doors. You won't miss it, straight through the stages, and you won't miss it. We have water and tea and snacks, so don't hesitate to pick it up anytime you need to eat or drink. So the first question that I have is, so let me ask you this question. How many of you know what news stands for? Raju, I'm not going to ask you. Okay, let me ask you this. Does news stand for notable events, weather, and sports? How many of you say that? Raise your hands. Notable events, weather, and sports. No, okay. North, west, east, south. North, east, west, south. Yeah? So anyone wants to say what the answer is? So news, it's not an acronym. It's really not an acronym. It just means information about current events. That's what news means. Did you all know that? I'm learning so much as I'm doing these sessions, believe me. I did one on immigration, and I had no idea what immigration, you would see these thick papers, visas from A to Z, A to X. There's no XYZ visa. So I'm learning so much as I'm coming into different fields as well. So Gina, I have the first question for you. So what challenge have you encountered in your professional career or your personal life that has surprised you?
Well, I've been a journalist for over 25 years.
And you can look at the audience. And
Okay, yeah. I was just trying to see if this works. Okay, so I've been a journalist for over 25 years. I've worked in Mexico. That's where I actually started my career. I was born there and raised there. And I started working for United Press International, which was at that moment still one of the 5 main news organizations or news agencies at that time. And then I moved to Japan for a couple of years, and then I moved to the United States. So I've been very lucky to be able to see journalism throughout, what Latin America is, what Asia is, which is a completely different view from our Western view of the world. And then, of course, the United States. To me, I think the challenge of making those interpretations of what events really mean to each community, that is very challenging. I've been through really, bad situations like the Kobe earthquake in Japan. Some events that actually transcend our idea of what's going to happen, for example, the last elections in the United States. I worked for 18 years for CNN, so that also, gave me a different view of what disasters and elections and political movements and revolutions and just the activism of people, just how it has changed. Challenging, I think, to me, has been trying to understand what other people are thinking when I'm trying to convey them.
Got it, okay.
My events. And it's difficult because I'm Hispanic, and sometimes Hispanics, we see things in a certain way. We interpret things in a certain way. For us, for example, touching somebody is not as badly looked as it would be for Americans. Americans have a different way of seeing, and Japanese or Asians are completely different also of the way of thinking. So trying to be able to get the facts so straight that anybody can really see what I'm trying to explain, I think that is the most challenging for me.
Awesome. So do you want us to increase her volume? I guess the music going on the other side. They've been trying to do that, but Neelam is going to check on it again. Because the same question for you, the same question for Tiltea. What has surprised you in your journalist career?
Hello, everyone. I would like to clear that I'm currently an IT professional, and it's been 2 years I have come into the field of social media journalism. And why I came into this is the kind of news we wanted the details that was not coming out from most of the TV channels and the print media. And when I'm talking about my 80 to 90% of journalism is related to India, and rest is all across the world. The prime time news has become more of a religious war ground. The government policies, the headline said something else, showing something good, and the details were all gory. So that's what was the area, and I felt social media is one place where we people can actually go and make a difference. And that's where me and few of my friends, we started doing the YouTube videos and the Facebook videos to take out the message to the people and tell them what is the policy all about. What we see, this is good and this is bad. So we made it very sure that opinions were called as opinions and facts were called as facts. So right now on social media, opinions and the facts, that line in between is getting blurry. And that's what we are trying to make sure that facts remains the fact and opinion remains the opinion.
Very nice. So what has surprised you, if you can very briefly say, in this what you've been doing?
Okay. On a high level, I'll just take about one policy over here, demonetization. This policy happened in India in November 2016, if I remember it correctly, 2 years back. Under that, all the hard currency of India was wiped out, declared as illegal. The idea was the government wanted to bring all together a new currency. And they were saying, this will kill the terrorism, this will kill the Naxalism, this will kill the corruption, and this will, so many things, good things. And as a policy analyst, I was like, this is complete bulls. I'm like, that's not even going to happen. And I'll tell you, till today, the Reserve Bank of India is not able to count the total notes received. That's a big thing. In last 2 years, the Reserve Bank of India is not able to count those total number of notes, and that's not even a question on the prime media today in India, because they are trying to hide the failure of the current government. This is one of the shocking things, and which actually made my first video.
Very nice. Thank you, Sonia. Thanks, Vikas. So what has surprised you in your journalist career or your professional career?
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. So I am representing the fiction side of things here, not fake news, but the fiction side of things. I write personal essays, and I'm predominantly a novelist. My first novel was set against the Kashmir conflict, when my protagonist had her family murdered, and then she went from relative to relative, ended up in the US. And my second protagonist was a boy who had grown up in US suburbia, as kids in suburbia grow up very sheltered. And it was about their interaction and what happens when you literally have grown up in the US suburbia, but suddenly you have conflict, not just at your doorstep, but inside your house. How do you deal with that? What do you do with that? And my male protagonist finds himself in a terrorist training camp in Afghanistan, and he realized that it's one thing to have ideals at the dinner table and altogether another to be in the front, in the field. There's a whole strain in that particular novel about identity and what it means to be an American. I wrote it it came out 4 years ago, but it's actually very disturbing to see how relevant that particular question has become, as we find with this current administration asking repeatedly and telling people what it does mean to be American, what it means to be un-American, which was very much in that novel. So fiction writers, novelists very much we don't write propaganda. Propaganda is when you take the side of one policy, one entity, one group, and further their message. Fiction writers, novelists are people who look into everyone's souls, and that's what our books and stories are about. My second novel, which is coming out next year, is called Unmarriageable, and that also straddles different cultures. It's a rewrite of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and it's set in Pakistan. And one of the reasons, in fact, a big reason I wrote that novel was because as a child who grew up in a post-colonial country where English was my medium of language, studies, education, it was very important to me to be able to take something that was policy made by Thomas Babington Macaulay back in 1835, I believe, which was still being implemented in the 21st century, which is why I'm actually speaking in fluent English probably with you today, and to take back a beloved classic novel, which is a particular favorite of mine, and reinterpret it in a culture in which I've grown up. So it's a melding of the English language and culture. So once again, novels can do so many tremendous things and show you the world in ways which I think, well, Netflix is doing a good job too, but the wonderful, beautiful thing with writing novels and fiction is that you can actually get into the heads of people. Now, I'm more on the side as a literary journalist. I have done book reviews, author reviews, locally for AJC, for Khabar, for Arts Atlanta. I've had essays in New York Times and stuff, and the wonderful thing with there again is as a literary journalist who reviews books, novels, nonfiction, and interviews authors, you can cross bridges with everyone. I've spoken to Nigerian authors such as Chimamanda Adichie. I've spoken to local Georgia for authors such as Pearl Clegg about her memoirs, what it meant to be living in Atlanta in the 70s when she grew up here. So as a literary journalist, I get to do so much. It's wonderful and it's exciting. The challenge is and is not, when you do book reviews and author interviews, you very much have to, and even in publishing, you have to pitch to the editor. You know, you have to say, I want to review this book, or I want to write about this author. For instance, some places in Georgia have a policy where they only want the author or the author to be or have some connection and link to Georgia. So sometimes you're restricted by stuff like that, but it's a wonderful field to be in because I do think we're able to contribute to a lot of the conversation about how to build bridges and break down borders against, across cultures, definitely through books.
Thank you, Sonia. So Taya, you're next. I'm sure you have a lot to tell us, but definitely tell us one surprising thing or challenge that has caught you by surprise in your career or professional
My whole
journalistic.
life. Well, thank you. Is this on?
Yes, hold on. Yes.
Thank you for having me. A colleague I used to work with at CNN is here. Thank you for coming out, Patty Tripathi. I appreciate that. I can't even think of one. I mean, every day is a surprise. I think this subject of news versus fiction versus nonfiction, we have to be very careful. How many people here were born in the United States? Nobody on the diet? Okay. You too. Yeah. Okay. Half and half, I guess. It's interesting because this is a country, we think that fake news is a big deal right now because our president has defined that phrase. But the truth is, as Americans, this is a tradition that we have. And if you think it is brand new, it is not. It is a hallmark, certainly in the British press. I don't know about the Indian press, but it's a hallmark of the British and American press from day one. It's about selling papers. So I can assure you, a very famous early publisher, William Randolph Hearst, who ran a number of papers at the turn of the century. William Randolph Hearst was very interested in selling newspapers. He made millions and millions and millions, billions of dollars. And he decided that he could sell more papers if the United States went to war with Spain. And he just pushed and pushed. If you go back and look at the headlines of his papers, you'll see just horrible lies about the Spanish-American War and over Cuba. And we did. We went to war. I mean, he literally whipped up the fury, and then we had a president that wanted to go to war, Theodore Roosevelt, and we had a made-up war. And if you go back even further and you look at something that was defined again in England called the penny papers, and they were pennies because in the old days, only fairly wealthy people would be able to afford the papers. And very smart journalists and publishers said, well, if they only cost a penny, everyone will buy them and I'll make a lot of money. But and there were numerous penny papers in a city. And so how do you think one stood out from the other?
News.
More sensational.
Sensational.
Right. Started in the 30s, 1830. So I've done a lot of research about this, and I think we have to be very careful about the times we live in, because we tend to keep repeating it and have to see it. First of all, it means like stay calm. We've done this over and over again. It may not be an attractive tradition or trait, but the press has those that would be considered left, right, center. Ugly things are printed. Cartoons printed in the papers during the election of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were horrific. They were embarrassing, showed these guys naked. I think that as difficult as it is to live in, understand that this is not, this is a continuum of where we have always been. And I don't think one person's ceiling is another's floor, so one person's fake news is one person's truth. And that's what we are experiencing, because you can take the same event and look at different headlines from different newspapers, the exact same event, and it will be told differently. But it's not, how many people here know about, and if you're born here, you may know about Watergate, which was the whole situation where Richard Nixon was pushed out of office. We as journalists, and the young journalists, are living that tradition of Watergate, where it's investigative journalism. We're going to go get the bad guy. We're going to go uncover it. But this is really a new phenomenon, that there is a truth. There is one reality. That is very much of a Watergate news sensibility. And we need to understand that we're not going to make this go away. We're not going to make this, I believe this, you believe this, and my publisher believes this, and my publisher believes that. I can read an article in the Wall Street Journal about a subject, and I can read a similar one in the LA Times, and they're completely different. So who's telling me the truth? No, I actually don't think that's true. I think they're telling their truth. I actually don't think that. I think that they see the world from very different perspectives. They see threats where one other person won't see a threat. So I think we have to be very level and measured. Now, mind you, my husband is like jumping around the house every night screaming at the TV. I mean, I live in the world of someone who has I will tell you that at CNN during the war with Iraq, I would go home and my husband would scream at me for something that I allowed on the air and that I wasn't showing. I know the one night he was so angry that I didn't show enough protesters in Europe to the war. And he said, they're going on, why didn't you show more? And the next day at work, I got into hot water with the head of Turner Broadcasting for showing too much. Now, who was right? It's their perspective. The problem, I think, comes in is when, I think the real problem isn't the media covering an event and seeing different views of it. I actually think the problem is the media doesn't cover an event. That's the scary part. That means it didn't happen. And that's when it gets really frightening. And now think about that. That I would fight for. I would fight to go cover an event. Doesn't matter if you have a different opinion, but it does matter. The silence matters. That's the key point, is the silence matters.
Definitely. Thank you so much. That was intense, and thank you, Taya, for all that information. So before we go to the next question with Frida, I just wanted to give a shout out to the team who's been helping me make this happen every month. Neelam is our intern. Neelam, thank you so much. If you can raise your hands. And we have Rajan. Rajan, if you can stand up or raise your hands, who's been helping with the setup and all that. And of course, my kids who support me. And, so thank you. And the ByteCraft Media, who's here helping, supporting our events as well. And thank you to the sponsors as well. So, Frida, the question for you is, what was your first big win in your career that you thought you were doing the right thing, that gave you power or energy to continue to do what you were doing? You can switch this on.
Hello? Yes, it is. First and foremost, I would like to say thank you for reaching out to me, and it is truly an honor, and I'm going to speak it into existence. I look forward to communicating with you all going forward in some capacity as it relates to our community, our state, our United States, our world. I have had many different experiences in my life. As a kid, and I call her beautiful. Every time I say, hi, beautiful. As a kid, I have been in the community working over 30 plus years nonstop. As a kid, my dad used to tell us, and I did not understand as a child, know how to communicate with a man, woman, or child living on the streets, or if you're communicating with the President of the United States. I'm 56 years old. I have communicated with thousands of homeless individuals, our sisters, brothers, children that are living on the streets. I have also had the pleasure of communicating with President Clinton, President Bush, and President Obama. I have also had the opportunity to travel extensively to the Caribbean. I haven't been to Japan yet. But the one thing I can say that keeps me going is each one of you. Each one of you. And I say that is because with all the things that are going on in our world, as you just mentioned, and forgive me, what's your name again? Taya. As you just mentioned, it's nothing new. The hashtag fake news is nothing new. It's just been revamped and rechanged and revised and revocalized, okay? But it means the same thing. So what keeps me going again is our sisters, brothers, children, all races, religions, all. Because if you think about it, no matter where you travel, whether you live here, was born here in the United States or not, we all want the same thing. We want peace, happiness, and love and safety for our families. But when you think about the politics, when you think about a lot of things that's going on, and I'm one, people ask, don't ask Frida unless you really want to know, because I'm going to tell you. It's about the dollar, money. That's what it's about, especially when you get to a certain level professionally, and when there are a lot of people that have quote unquote human power. It's about the dollar. So again, what keeps me going is working on behalf of each and every one of you, speaking for the voiceless. I just recently, and it was an honor, hosted 25 citizens from 19 different countries in Africa. They're leaving tomorrow, headed to Washington, D.C. I hosted a different group of 25 last year. It's a group that started this organization under President Barack Obama, the Young African Leaders of America. Even though their first stop in Atlanta was an event that I put on, in the United States, was an event that I put on June 24th here. But the one thing that I can say to you that I have learned, even from the citizens that came here for 6 weeks, they want the same thing. They want peace. They want to be productive. They want to be assets and not liabilities. And that's what we all want. So we have to work together. So again, just to recap, what keeps me moving is each one of you, whether you're here and even for those that are not. Thank you.
Thank you, Frida.
Very well said.
Yes, it's on, Parthiv. So what's that first win in your career that made you think you are on the right path?
Yeah. So in my case, I had a very tough decision to make maybe about 15 years back. I had spent about 7-8 years building a real estate business. And people who know, real estate is kind of career where, after 5-6 years is when you just start seeing the results. About the same time, Khabar, the magazine that we publish, was also growing. So I was doing both things at the time, but it came to a point where I just had to make a choice, because I just couldn't continue doing both. I could have made more money doing real estate, but I figured this is where my heart lies, this is where my passion is, so I'm glad that I made that decision to do journalism and to do writing. In terms of the moment of truth that validates my decision, in 2002, a lot of you may probably know that there was some nasty incidents in India. There was riots in Gujarat. And I had written an editorial, about it, kind of questioning the chief minister of the state, Narendra Modi, who is now the president of the country.
Prime Minister.
Prime Minister of the country. So that was a tough call because, I knew I would get a lot of heat on it. I knew it would, be challenging. I just didn't realize that there were about 30, 40 different organizations in the city who started a boycott campaign for the magazine. Those were tough times because, we are subsidized only by advertising. A lot of these guys were advertisers, and they started a boycott campaign and they insisted that we meet with them. I wasn't sure, but I had other partners with us, so we decided ultimately to meet with them. And I was in a venue where, there was a huge table. It was at the Gujarati Samaj Hall in Tucker. There's a huge table, about 40, 50 seats. There were about 35 of them. There were about 2 or 3 of ours. And I was basically grilled, about my thoughts, about an opinion, about questioning why 2,000 people had to die, So coming out of that, was very challenging, and I was a little concerned about the future of the magazine because I was like, well, if this is the case, I'm not sure if I can continue writing from my heart, But fortunately, something fascinating happened over the few months and a couple years down the road is, now most of the heat we got was from some right-wing Hindu organizations who didn't like the fact that we called Narendra Modi, responsible. But in the next few months, some of the biggest temples in the city and some of the biggest Hindu organizations supported Khabar. They advertised with us. In the meantime, I had corresponded with them, by email, explaining our position that I'm a proud Hindu. I'm not anti-Hindu, I'm a proud Hindu, but that doesn't mean that, I can't question what is done in the name of Hinduism. So hopefully that is what connected with people, but I had sent out dozens of these emails, I got some positive responses. And then eventually these temples and all, they started advertising with us, and I realized, what? If we can hold our ground, if we can, sustain through these tough times, then eventually people will support. And today, we are very happy that, all these organizations are great advertisers, they're great supporters, we write about them. So the lesson was that, if you are courageous enough to say what you have to say, and say it in a respectable manner, say it with credibility, but eventually I think it pans out. That's my...
Very nice.
Yeah.
Didn't know about that story. Thank you for sharing. Nydia, what's the first win in your career that you said, this is what I want to do?
Again, my name is Nydia Tisdale, and I want to thank Nazira for having me on this panel today. And I am been called by Columbia Journalism Review Georgia's most notorious citizen journalist. And I didn't make up that term. Citizen journalism is a real thing, and that's something a little different from just a activist or community organizer. A citizen journalist is someone who actually produces and performs acts of journalism and posts them online for the public consumption. And with social media today, YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, anyone can produce their own content and share it online for public consumption, and that is what I do. This is the Red Book. It is Georgia's Sunshine Laws, a citizen's guide to open government, and the Sunshine Laws include the Open Meetings Act and the Open Records Act. This is known as the Red Book. It is published by the Georgia State Attorney General's Office, the Georgia First Amendment Foundation, and the Georgia Press Association. This book quite literally changed my life because I learned that as a citizen, I can attend and I can video record and audio record all public meetings by any governmental agency, which is what I started to do. I was attending a lot of meetings, and I was being bullied by a particular public official, verbally harassed and harangued, and so I started carrying an audio recorder and then a camera and then a video camera to record and document his verbal abuse of not only myself, but other citizens, other staff, other government officials, and other government employees. And he actually did not win his bid for re-election. So I have received 3 awards during my time working as a citizen journalist, one from the Georgia First Amendment Foundation, their Open Government Hero Award, and one from Common Cause Georgia, their Democracy Award, and this year I received from the Atlanta Press Club their Impact Award. So one of the wins that I had was when I was exercising my First Amendment right of free speech and free press to video record a meeting and exercising my right as a citizen, exercising Georgia's open meetings law, allowing me to video record a public meeting. A mayor of a small city of about 5,000 population in a very large county, the city of Cumming in Forsyth County, Mayor H. Ford Gravett instructed the chief of police, Casey Tatum, to remove the camera from the auditorium during an open and public city council meeting. And I exclaimed, "Excuse me, Mayor, I have a right by Sunshine Law to record this meeting." He replied, "It's not up for discussion. Remove the camera." I was physically, forcibly removed from Cummings City Hall by the chief of police and the deputy chief of police for simply exercising my First Amendment right. And within hours, I filed a complaint with the state attorney general's office. Attorney General at that time, Sam Olens, filed a lawsuit against the city of Cumming and against the mayor, and he prevailed. I likewise filed a lawsuit against the same and the chief of police and the deputy chief, and my federal lawsuit alleging violation of my civil rights was settled on the eve of trial outside of court for a sum of $200,000. So that was a big win for me and for open government and for free speech, free press, First Amendment freedoms. So it was a battle much bigger than myself. And a lot of people started showing up at video recording meetings. I have a YouTube channel with about 1,200 YouTube videos of mostly pretty boring city council meetings and county commission meetings and candidate debates and candidate forums. Last weekend in my town, the city of Roswell, our mayor was hosting a rally for the gubernatorial candidate Brian Kemp. And I attended and video recorded the rally, and there was a group of protesters there, and I video recorded the protesters as well. And I actually had a friend film with me, so I had two cameras, two camera angles. And so I'm kind of editing the video, and I've got the person on the microphone, the candidate speaking, giving his stump speech, and then I've got the protesters, and I've got both of them. And I was kind of in a quandary, well, which one do I show? And I decided I'll do both. And I did like an instant replay. Where you could see what the person was saying on the microphone, but then you could also see the protesters. So I just kind of recycled and repeated. It was about 30 seconds. But I didn't want to filter. I didn't want to editorialize. I usually say nothing in my journalism. I don't express an opinion if I even had an opinion because I don't feel qualified to give an opinion. I want the viewer or the reader to reach their own conclusion, draw their own conclusion. So that's why I present my journalism via video camera, because the video can't lie. This is what this candidate said, and I simply post the date and the time and the event at which the public official or public person figure was speaking. And so that was a big win. I've actually gotten considerable resistance at multiple meetings, video recording, where I have been commanded to stop filming. I was actually arrested and taken to jail, and that was in Dawson County, which is one county north of Forsyth County. That was almost 4 years ago, and I am fighting that in court, and I have another court date on Tuesday. I was indicted for 3 counts: obstruction of an officer, misdemeanor and felony, plus criminal trespass at an open to the public campaign rally for Governor Nathan Deal in August of 2014. And so rather than waive my right to sue the county for violating my civil rights, in exchange for dropping the charges, I said, I'll go to court. And everyone tried to talk me out of going to court. I absolutely insisted, I'm going to court. I'm not waiving my rights, I prefer exercising my rights. And I had a week-long trial in November and December. I was found not guilty on 2 of the charges, the felony obstruction and the criminal trespass, and I was found guilty of the misdemeanor obstruction, which I have filed an appeal, a motion for a new trial with the trial court. And that'll be held on Tuesday in Dawson County, and that is open to the public. So I'm still fighting for First Amendment freedoms. I've been very fortunate to have some brilliant pro bono attorneys represent me, because this case is so much bigger than me. It's a threat to our free press, our right to have access to public events where public officials are speaking about matters of public business. So that was my win, and I continue to fight because I'm passionate about free speech and free press. That is so near and dear to journalists' hearts that we will stand and we will find a fight for those freedoms. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nydia, for sharing that story. Thank you. And we wish you the best in continuing the fight for the freedom. Andy, we saved the best for the last.
I can't say anything as dramatic as what Nydia said. That was tremendous work that you're doing there. I was very fortunate, okay? My first career was as a teacher and a coach, and I loved working with kids. I taught junior high, and well, they call it middle school now, right? But it was so far back then, they called it junior high. I liked that area, that level of kids, but I decided to go into journalism as a second career, and so I got lucky. I was at the AJC, but I was bouncing around among jobs at the AJC. I did some Southern regional reporting. I did some education reporting. I did a lot of editing. And it was 1992, and my editor said, you know, we really want to cover healthcare. We have people who cover medicine and science, but we want to get people, we want you to cover a new beat to focus on the money that's involved in healthcare. And the consumer angle in terms of getting insurance and getting the care you need. And so I said, okay, I've been to a doctor before, I can handle this. Nazira, you know how complicated healthcare is, right? Yes. So I started out in 1992, and I've heard people on this panel use the word passion, and suddenly, after 2 or 3 or 4 years of doing this, I found my passion. I can't imagine another beat that has so many dimensions, whether it's a consumer facing bankruptcy because they can't pay their medical bills, whether it's hospital consolidation and what that means for patients and prices, whether it's the cost of health insurance. It never goes down, it always goes up, right? It's a political issue. I mean, all you have to do is throw out the word Obamacare, and you can divide the room in half, right? The friends of it and the foes of it. It's a social justice issue, people not getting the care they need. I always try to keep the consumer and the patient in mind as I write, but it's fascinating. If I was covering retail, okay, how many Black Friday stories could you do, shopping stories, before you go absolutely bored out of your mind, right? But healthcare has been tremendous for me. I've been doing it for 26 years. I don't think I have another 26 years, but it's really a great thing. I'm very fortunate to be writing about these very important issues.
Thank you so much, Andy. So the next question I have is for Gina. Gina, the arc of any career is the truth, right? And I would say in any professionals or professionalism or professions that we take up, there is some sort of judgmental. We judge people, that's just inherent within us, whether it's immigration lawyers or the doctors or the teachers, and similarly with journalism, right? The reason I'm telling all this is to come back to the topic of immigration. We've started to label people, and we're starting to isolate people, but you are in midst of it because you're working for Telemundo. How do you keep the conversations going as a Hispanic American, and basically how do you show the truth? Because we don't see so much of the truth of minorities on TV. It's usually on the negative aspect. How do you sort of balance it out?
Okay. Well, before answering your question, I'm going to go a little bit, and I'm not going to take long, I swear, a little bit about everything we've said, and that's going to bring me actually to your question. I'm a journalist. I went to college, went for 4 years to college, and I've been working in this profession for, as I said, for 25 years. And I know that it's recognized the world, the name citizen journalism. And I understand that. But I'm asking all of you, how many of you would go to a citizen doctor, to a citizen physician? How many of you would hire a citizen architect? a citizen engineer, a citizen anything, at what's supposed to be the profession to look for you in your healthcare. Would you go to somebody who opened a book and said, you know something, I know everything about how the heart works, and I can cure you because I know as much as a cardiologist? So I've always had a little bit of trouble with that citizen journalism name. But then again, most of the journalists that I have worked with throughout my life didn't go to college. They were also people who were very passionate. The father of my son is an AP correspondent, and his career actually did not start as a journalist. He was a mathematics, physics teacher, but he was so passionate about telling stories that he started working as one in a small newspaper and eventually became, a really good reporter. Maybe not such a good one, but he became a very good reporter, really world recognized. So I understand that passion. I understand that people can become what they want in this very accepting career that is not the same for any other career. You can become a journalist by your passion. You cannot become a doctor just by your passion. You cannot become an architect just by your passion, or a lawyer. You wouldn't trust somebody just to go defend you in a court of law if they were not like a real lawyer. So people are very important. All of you guys are very important. And that brings me also to the business side of journalism. We are professionals. We live from this. I don't do my job, as much as I love and as much as passion I have for my job, I don't do it for free. I don't expect you to expect me to do it for free. Information, you have access and a right to information, but that doesn't mean that you have a right to access to free information. And companies, they are businesses. You probably remember the recent attack to the Maryland Gazette. And I don't know if you followed the story, but it was a horrible attack. Some, journalists died. And then the company was asking for help from the public, because unfortunately the Gazette was already under some money problem. They were under some financial problems. They actually belong to a bigger company called Trunk that is the owner of several other newspapers. They just recently, a few months ago, sold the LA Times, if I'm not mistaken, and they're about to make also some changes. I think it's to the Chicago Tribune. This is a really big company. It's not a poor company. Trunk is not a poor company. Trunk is a company owned by some millionaires, some other stock market companies, and so it's not like they're poor or anything, or that they cannot support it, but it's a business. They have to make money out of this. You probably also heard about the recent bought yesterday announced of ABC buying Fox, although that's not going to include the Fox News business, and the recent merger of AT&T and Time Warner. These are businesses. These are companies that are controlling the way that we receive our information based on how much money they also get back from it. And working for CNN was a wonderful thing. They have wonderful benefits for their employees, but sometimes it doesn't necessarily reflect on the kind of information that you get from Fox, from CNN, from NBC, even or probably the only one that would kind of save itself from all this is the public broadcastings, because they actually depend on the money that people give to them. They depend on the money that you guys donate. That good people donate from their own companies or from their own, fellowships, even from the government that comes actually from your taxes. But everybody else is in it to make money. And so when we talk about business, we really have to think, who are we getting our information from? And it is very important for you to look at every single source of information to try to make your own decisions and try to make your own choices about what is truth. Because everybody is going to have a little interest in it. And social media, I'm not skipping you. Social media, this is our challenge. You are a challenge, and citizen journalists is a challenge for us, the long-time journalists, because we have to adapt. We have all these people. There is a change. Teja was talking about that nothing is new in journalism. Surely, we have yellow journalism since William Randolph Hearst. But the thing is, we have now this pressure to find the truth. People are not satisfied, and they have this hunger to know more, to think that there's always something behind what we're seeing. Video can lie. You won't imagine it, but video, even like she was saying that she goes and records because video cannot lie. Well, actually, yes, video can lie. If I show you only one segment of a scene, that video is not showing you everything else. So people in social media, people in citizen journalism are a challenge for us to try to adapt to all of this. And to find the truth, it's more difficult than ever because personally, I don't think there's one truth. I think everybody has their own truth. I think you have your own experiences throughout your life, and you yourself have your own experiences, and I have my own experiences, and I'm gonna decide which thing or which event or which truth adapts better to what I am living. For somebody who was born in the U.S. and has never had to cross the border and walk in the desert and think about the things that they have to leave behind in their own countries, coming to this country might be perceived as a threat. They call them illegal immigrants because they think they're breaking the law. And sure, they are. There are laws. But we cannot call somebody just illegal. Just recently, I think it was a couple of days ago, that the Department of Justice just decided that everything is going to be called now illegal immigrants, and they're going to change the way that immigrants are called when they cross the border without any proper documentation, which goes against the AP and other organizations that we have agreed not to call them that way.
So Gina, if you can quickly make your comments, we can move forward with you.
So to me, the truth is it's very difficult to grasp. But I would ask the public to be able to support, the people you receive the information from, do your donations to to PBA, buy your GPB, buy your newspapers. Don't just trust what you can get for free on your social media. For the people in social media, I would really ask that don't just call yourself journalists because you have a passion. Really think about the responsibilities of those actions. What is it that you're going to be accomplishing? What is it that you need to fulfill so you're not breaking ethics, journalism ethics that we have worked so long to try to get. And finally, for our dear writer, in the end, you're the one who's gonna interpret all our reality. Because many of you probably been reading 1984 for the last couple of years. And 1984 started almost like a fiction, and it's brought us to this reality. So you're gonna be able eventually to interpret all this, and that's when we're finally gonna get our truth.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina, for elaborating what is the truth from your side, from your perspective. And then as we move forward, we're also going to discuss the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and who can say it and who can't, right? So because I was not going to use the four-letter F word, but I guess today it is about it, and it's the fake news, right? The four-letter F word.
You just said it.
Yeah, the fake. So what my question to you is the communication theory, right? So the communication theory, the faults and the challenges in the communication theory is that between the sender and the receiver, there's a lot of medium going on. The cultural differences, the biases, the information or the knowledge that the person has. So it gets distorted in several ways. And I guess that's how the fake news comes to be, the misinformation, the propaganda, the wrong information that's out there. How do you feel, and what are you doing about the fake news?
Okay. So the perspective you are hearing is about from the journalism. So I'll talk from the audience perspective.
And also the other part of the question is, what are the incentives for spreading some information like that, and why would people do that?
Okay. So what am I doing for the fake news, and why people are spreading the fake news? So we'll talk about that. I guess most of you would have watched movies and soap operas. How many have you changed your emotion while watching a soap opera or a movie? Laughed, smiled, cried, felt sad? Raise your hands, just show me hands, if you felt afraid, if you're seeing a cartoon, you smiled. Well, yes, most of you. And that is the reason. Now the news media rooms have understood we have to compete with the soap operas. And that is where the problem is coming on. Yellow journalism had been there for thousands of years, as ma'am also said in the beginning. But that time, we were socializing more, we were talking to the people. But right now, our reality is our social media phones. That has become our reality. The flow of information is more, but the one source of information, it's not one, it has become many. So first understand why they are able to serve you fake news. Has there been anyone who has not fallen for a fake news? I myself have fallen for fake news. Raise your hand if you have never been fallen for a fake news. You would come eventually, right? After 2 days, 3 days, like the WhatsApp University. So we meet a lot of people who are WhatsApp University graduates and from the Facebook and all. I'll tell you how it's happening and why it's happening. Technology has to play a major role out it. On a Facebook, you like certain pages. And from those certain pages, you are getting those feeds. So those 5 pages are sending you continuous feed, and that becomes your truth. That's what is happening. And then you say, like, for the last 2 years, I was getting this information, and now suddenly you are coming and changing my reality. It's like for the last thousands of years, I was believing in God, and today you are saying. So that's how this difference occurs. So that's how we need to understand from our emotional perspective, how are we being exploited. Second thing, the videos cannot lie, like she said, and she already gave one part of it. I'm going beyond that. All of you would have heard about Photoshop. Editing photos. I'm sure you would have got your couple photos with a lot of brightness, a lot of background, right? That's a Photoshop. Now, the term deep fake you would hear. Deep fake means you can create a fake videos of, let's say, President Obama speaking something, and you would not be able to say, okay, this was a fake video. What I'm saying right now, and how they would do it. Let's say I'm a YouTube speaker, so it will be very easy for me. I would have done thousands of videos. The artificial intelligence would find my face, the way I speak, the distance between my lips and all, and then they will be able to emulate the wordings and reflect on me to create that deep fake videos. So the challenge is not only going to be for the journalist, the challenge is going to for you, so that are you getting the right information or not? What I feel is, one way is, I always listen more if there is a criticism out there. That I always ensure people are criticizing me and I'm getting the negative feedback. Then I can go back and check my facts. That is where I want to live in the era of a truth, of not my truth, for everybody's truth. I'll give you an example. I guess it was a couple hundred years back, or maybe a little more, I'm not sure on the dates right now. Sun used to revolve around Earth, or Earth used to revolve around Sun. Have you heard about this controversy earlier? People had to die just to say that, it is the Earth which revolves around the Sun. But now what is the truth? Are you sure? Did you read science? Most of us would not have read science, but because some people are already propagating it, we are still believing it. But yes, it does, because I have checked with my scientist friends also. So the onus is on us to reach out to, as she said, if citizen journalist is putting up something out, you reach to the established one also. Because citizen journalists are doing one interesting thing. We are asked, not all, again, there are citizen journalists who are doing the propaganda also. There are citizen journalists who are going on the sense like, boss, this is the policy and this is how we should see, how this is going to be impactful to you. So we have to reach out to the people and ask those specific questions. But important point comes over here is the brainwashing technique. What are those brainwashing techniques which powerful people, politicians, or the media people who are doing the propaganda? I'm not sure CNN is doing or not, but that's what our president keep on saying, and I don't believe him that much, to be very frank. So so I was talking about how they are doing this brainwashing technique. There are a couple of points I'll tell you. The first thing is create a sense of immediate danger and fear. Now, biologically and rationally speaking, if you talk to some psychologists, when a sense of fear is increased, your rational mind in actual stops thinking, or it shifts to the reaction part. You will take more action unconsciously rather than going into the rational mind. And if I say there is going to be a bomb over here, none of you are going to say, oh, this is lying on a, okay, let's go out and then think. It's a sense of danger I have created right now. I'm saying a truth or not, that's up to me. For you, okay, let's go out, we will decide it later. So that thing you have to see if your leaders are creating that sense of fear or not. You would have to actually see. Second thing is the big data. What is big data in technology terms is, right now you're on a social media in various forms. You're commenting, you like abortion should happen, should not happen, what you have liked. According to that, all this data, all your previous interaction history is being stored in the clouds, not the clouds in the sky, it's the servers. And we have the technology now, artificial intelligence or the lot of database tools, according to which we could see how this person would react given a certain situation. If I take a funny example, if you would have seen in the Bollywood movies, or maybe the Hollywood movies, the way an actor would woo an actress, or the way an actress would woo an actor, there are some certain set of rules. Oh, you take her the flowers. Yeah, see? You just say, wow, you're looking beautiful. See the smile. See the smile.
Big smile.
See, I'm lucky to be sitting in between two wonderful ladies out here and, all the wonderful gentlemen out. So these are the certain set of rules, so according to which a person would react. So when this big data is thrown to the political leaders, they will say, okay, today we have to say this because more percentage of people are gonna smile. Doesn't matter, they're gonna do the same thing. It's only about saying. So action, you have to see the real action happening.
I have to say, in many Bollywood movies, the response to that can also be a slap, but I will refrain on this stage from that. Not all women are the same.
Okay, I hope I'm not sitting with a feminazi.
You are sitting with a feminist, not a feminazi. And everyone, male and female, can be a feminist.
Well, I am a feminist, so don't worry about it. It's okay.
Okay, so because let's go to the point of just quickly, few seconds before we move to Sonia's question. My question was, what is the incentive that people are getting to spread
So
misinformation?
there are two incentives. The very first incentive is, again, a citizen career, not out of truth always. People are trying to make their career out of lies. They know that people are fools out there and they want to have the fiction news, so people create fiction news for them. They create fictional news, and with the reach of the internet, so there were so many websites which were made, which were serving the news to support Trump. They were saying something wrong about Clinton and all, and they say like, yes, a lot more number of people wanted to hear positive about the Trump during the last recent election. But now they have realized people want to hear more against him, so those people are serving up, cooking up stories, bringing in the fictional writers, and creating some news stories. That's one thing. And how they earn is per click incentives. On YouTube, everywhere, if there is ads enabled, on every click, you are giving them a chance to earn some money. That's the first part.
So financial benefit.
Financial
okay.
benefit. The second part is, it is an organized crime happening. I'm saying organized. Most of the political people have set up their IT offices who are trained to propagate this news, who are trained to select the citizen journalist or maybe some of the good journalists and then do the character assassination of them. They don't have the answer to when they are saying, see, I'm seeing this is white. Oh no, he was sleeping with that girl. Oh, see, during the college time it was happening like that. Oh, see, he's coming in this particular dress. Oh, he's from Mexico. Or he's from India, or he's from southern part of the USA. So they are not
made up, cooked up stories for political gain.
Exactly.
Okay,
So that's why to get those political benefits. So these are the two main things. One, my interest. I want to make money. I will serve whatever people want to hear. Second thing is the political people are actually setting up offices, and that's a big thing happening in India. I'll give you one quick example. On social media, especially on Twitter, our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, follows only very specific set of people. It's around 170, 200, something in that range, maybe a little more or less. The people who he follows, the Prime Minister of India follows, they have been found misbehaving, or the language, the crass language, threats, and abusive language to even the women journalists on the social media. Now, it has been brought again and again in the Prime News channel and by the independent journalists like us that, okay, Prime Minister, I know you don't want, you are not asking them to do it. But if you are following them and they have written in their Twitter that proud to be followed by PM and then they are abusing, I think you have something to answer. And he does not have the dignity to unfollow those guys.
So because let's not go into from what I hear from you is you're saying for political gain and for financial gain.
I think
people are spreading misinformation, and we'll discuss as we move along about how to become a well-informed consumer.
Okay, sure.
Awesome, thank you. So Sonia, the question for you is sometimes these hostility. Hospitality is good, right?
But it can very quickly change into hostility.
Hostility,
depending on
right. So we've heard so far, which is I'm glad that you're all opening up and giving from your own perspectives today. The journalists have to have a good relationship with the political administration. The past, but current, in order to get into the newsrooms, in order to portray the news, they have to be in good relationship. But you're sort of out of all of that because you're into book publishing. And one of the questions from the audience earlier was, when they registered, was how do you publish a book? So apart from that, looks like you've gotten into the book publishing media where you don't hear the current, the live hostility comments. And you've established a credibility because people have edited again and again, and that's when you got to publish the book. Why did you get into the publishing medium? And just for interest of time, so we'll make it quick answers so we get to the second round.
I have the novelist side of my life, which is the fiction writing, and then I have the literary journalism, which is reviewing books and interviewing authors. Now, obviously, when you write fiction, when you're a novelist, short story writer, poet, you are not practicing propaganda. Anyone who practices propaganda is not worth the ink they're wasting and the paper and the trees that we're chopping down to publish their work. The fiction writer's job, very much like Gina said, is to be an interpreter of the world that they see and to present every viewpoint to the best of their ability in order to give everyone a fair chance of being heard and to get into characters. However, as a literary journalist, no author, no human being is without their political point of view and how they feel, their morals, their ethics, their philosophy of life, how they choose to, and that is often reflected in the work they present also. You know, you can pick up a novel where the author might be told she's nice looking and she will smile and they will go off into the sunset. You'll have another author who will write that, you know, the person gets a slap and there's no sunset. You know, so those political viewpoints of a writer, any writer, are always there. So when I'm interviewing authors and stuff, it does sometimes come to, you know, there is that fine edge between identity politics often comes up a lot. I remember when I was interviewing Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie about Americana, which is a wonderful novel about the identity politics between being an African American and between being an American or someone who has come from the continent of Africa, which is obviously made of so many different countries, so even there the identity politics are divided. And you know, you have to be prepared for what you're going to ask the author and what they're going to say in return when it comes to these things. So there's always politics going on. No matter what field of, whether it's journalism, obviously, but even if it's just fiction writing, where one might think that politics does not enter the field at all. Unfortunately, with newspapers and stuff these days, we're seeing more and more shrinkage of space given to book reviewing, given to author interviews and stuff, which is a pity because often when you pick up a novel, what you get is definitely entertainment, but you also get a different perspective of the world and a different perspective of, you know, characters' viewpoints, which perhaps reporting is not able to give. I mean, I remember when I was much younger and very interested in going into regular journalism, you know, one of the first things I was taught was it's all about what, where, who, why, and when. And I had to take my own perspective out of it, my own emotions out of it, and I just had to do sheer reportage. I remember this was something I was writing about in Pakistan about pedophilia, and this was 20 years ago. And it was absolutely impossible for me to take my emotions out of it. And that's when I realized that journalism in its pure form is not for me. Instead, I wrote a short story, and you know, and I realized that there's value to that also because I was still spreading. I was, you know, as novelists, as short story writers, poets, we're able to give that same information, but we're able to elaborate on the setting and very, very importantly on the psychology of what someone. Of the perpetrator, the victim, and the survivor. Often the stories we want to tell are of survival stories. So there's always that fine line. And I think creative nonfiction, which a lot of people on this panel I'm sure are very familiar with, creative nonfiction is your essays. It's still nonfiction, but what it uses is the techniques of fiction. So you will have, instead of just saying it was October the 7th, you know, and such car went down, you will have something like, you know, it was October the 7th, but there was also the sun was shining, or maybe it was raining, and, you know, there was a man with wearing a red coat passing by, and he had so you'll paint a scene. Often stuff like that draws, as creative nonfiction writers can tell, and more reporters that are I think, doing this too, if they're practicing techniques of fiction in their reporting, painting scenes, because it's scenes, it's connecting to human beings on their humanity and on the things we see around us, which brings us into other people's lives and other people's. For instance, there's, I'm sure everyone will remember that the Indian IT guy, I believe, his name was Srinivas Kochibhotla. He was from South India. He was murdered in Kansas in 2017. You know, murdered in cold blood. The white supremacist guy, or he was upset about immigration. He walked into the bar. He asked the two Indian guys, one of which was Srinivas, you know, are you illegal immigrants? This was his first question. His, you know, and he was actually kicked out of that bar. He came back with a gun, and he went on a shooting rampage. And unfortunately, this poor immigrant fellow lost his life, and his wife is still trying to fight his case and trying to find justice for all of that. But so that was your reportage point of it. So you would find that in New York Times, in the Kansas newspapers, in Washington Post, etc., on CNN, GPB, on all of your, pure reporting. What novelists, what fiction writers, what poets and stuff do is what personal essayists do, is we take that same information and we interpret through the viewpoints of the people who are involved in those things. So for instance, a fellow colleague of mine wrote in Guernica magazine, her name is, oh dear, it's right here. She wrote an essay through the point of view of the murdered immigrant's wife about how it's called, the piece's name is called An Alternate History, and it's about how he comes back from work, he says, I'm going out for a drink with my friend, he goes for a drink with his friend. Now in reality, we all know what happened, he didn't come back home. But in that story, in that essay she gives through the point of view of that woman's eyes, she paints a picture of how they came here as immigrants, and then she gives a twist ending, the alternate history, which is that he did come home. And that is the beauty of what fiction writers can do, which is we can really pack a punch, because we know he didn't come home. The reality was, the fact was, he didn't come home. But the truth is that maybe for her somewhere, he's still coming home every day, And that sadness and that loss and that hope that this doesn't happen again, that's what fiction writers are able to convey. So we might not be, we're not journalists in the reportage sense, but we're definitely journalists in the sense of being able to convey the emotions that each of us feel. Each of us, no matter what skin, race, color, creed, whatever, we all do feel the same emotion. We all eat.
Definitely.
So that is the role of the fiction writer. As far as book publishing and stuff is concerned, that is a whole different question. I don't know if it's for this panel, and you are please welcome to contact me through my website or after this, and I can give you a whole rundown about how very, very hard field. It makes no money or very little money. It is truly a passion, something you really want to do, because trust me, the reason you know Stephen King is because there's one Stephen King. Okay?
Sure.
So,
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. So, Taya, does Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood exist? That was I had to wake the audience up, right?
I was actually at Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood last week. I was at a meeting at a station called WHYY, Philadelphia, which is where Mr. Rogers shot all of his shows. We were right in the same studio having a meeting. So I would say actually Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood does exist. Have any of you seen the movie about Mr. Rogers? I highly recommend it, because talk about passion. This man had a way of looking at the world and how we treat children that was so different. And as we matured into who he was, as he matured into who he was, he came up against a lot of criticism. So I highly recommend it, because I don't think that Mr. Rogers lived in a fantasy world. I think Mr. Rogers actually lived in the world that we rarely acknowledge, which is children's world. And certainly at the time when Mr. Rogers was very popular, although he still is, he saw from a children's viewpoint, and we weren't very ready to see that. He made a lot of amazing moments. There was a period when Mr. Rogers was on the air, and there was a period when African Americans and whites were not allowed to swim in the same swimming pool. So what Mr. Rogers did is he created a character of the, I think it was a sheriff or the police. Was it the sheriff? Yeah. And he invited, the sheriff came on, and Mr. Rogers was soaking his feet in a little baby pool, and it was very hot, and this is how he was cooling down, and the sheriff came on the set, and they had a little interaction, and Mr. Rogers asked him to share the pool and put his feet in the pool. And it was such a beautiful way to make such a powerful statement. And it was a way that a child, we could understand the double entendre of that, but it was also a way of a child, it's something so simple, just put your feet in the cold water with me, and a child could accept that.
Very nice. Very nice,
So,
Thea.
yeah, so.
It was a warm-up question, but
Oh.
so here's, here's the real question.
Yes.
And if we can answer quickly, we can move to the
Okay.
next panelist. How do you, does ethical consideration exist in a newsroom? And how do you vet through the reporting over the unbiases of a reporter? I know many times PBS or GPB does stories across the world. I've seen one on India, but they are covering mostly the minor, someone who doesn't look like them. But how do you vet through the process that they're getting the information right?
I
And
think
how is it authentic?
I think if anyone says that journalists aren't biased are not telling the truth. It is humanly impossible not to be biased, because we each grow up with a set of values that are passed on to us from our parents. Now, we may not agree with those, and we may grow up thinking very differently, but we are biased. We are biased. It literally is impossible. So what you have to do is make sure that someone at least is reporting what they believe to be the truth. I will tell you, there's nothing, the attack on journalistic entities right now is very painful for journalists. Let's be clear about this. These are people that work very, very hard, 85% of them. And I don't care whether you're, I just have to tell you that the Fox News Southeast Bureau is in my building. And I know most of those guys, and they're great guys. They are as hardworking as any other journalist. And I would say they were what we would call non-biased. So I think we have to be very careful in separating journalists out here as some very odd, strange, non-human. And they're not. They are trying so hard to tell you what they see. So it's not as hard as you think. I think the important thing are monitoring your sources, making sure that they have checked and double-checked, and they can still get it wrong. And they need to say when they get it wrong. But you have to believe that those that you believe in, and you choose who you believe in. Every day you pick up a newspaper and you choose who you believe in. Right after the election, I chose to take off all, out of my website, all the apps from every news television site. Whether it was at Fox, MSNBC, whatever it was. Because I actually believed that the better journalism right now was being done by the newspapers. And I uploaded about 10 newspapers on my app. And I actually think 10 years ago, the better journalism was being done by those cable news networks, because they were taking us into places we had never been and showing us things we had never seen, and the newspapers were sort of dragging their feet. I think it's the opposite right now, and it doesn't mean that they are the people you agree or disagree with. That's just a given. But I do think that you have to look at how many sources, and I do not believe the New York Times is always right. I do not believe the Washington Post is always right. And I do not believe the Washington Times is always right. I think you have a responsibility that if you're in the business of consuming news and you're interested in it, you should look at several different sources. And in there, somewhere in there, you'll find your truth.
Definitely. Thank you. Well said, Thea. So before I ask the question for Frida, I would definitely like to acknowledge the Japanese Consulate General, Takashi. Thomas, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. And also feel free to get tea and samosas anytime during the session. So Frida, you are not a journalist. You are an advocate. I didn't say this, but I'm sure you hear people saying that to you all the time.
Yes.
But does that discredit you from saying what you want, or does it give you a medium to speak where you want to or what you want to show people that what you say counts?
Good question. First, let me or allow me to start like this. I am listening to everyone that's on this panel. I have very close friends that are journalists on the main news stations, television stations, radio, etc., not just in the state of Georgia, but across the United States. The one thing that I can tell you that I believe, I'll say 95%, but I really want to, you know what, I'm going to say 99% of us that are in here will agree. We, and I'm going to say as journalists, I'm going to include myself, because of the fact that we have a choice, we have an identity, we have a voice, we are uniquely torn from the same cloth. And I say that because everyone up here have shared some information about their beliefs or not quietly agreeing with another individual, if you will. But we all know how to respectfully communicate what you want to be shared. Now, when it comes to me, I have had a radio station. My voice was heard across the United States and beyond. I still speak, and often I'm asked to be a special guest on many radio stations and television. I would say that I am a voice of truth. And again, if you think about it, when I first spoke, I shared with you all, people would say, don't ask Frida unless you really want to know. It's my truth that I have researched and provided facts on. This past election for mayor for the city of Atlanta, if you all recall, we had a slew of people running for mayor. Do you recall that? I actually hosted on WSB TV2 and KISS 104.1 FM, I had them combined, just about everyone that ran for mayor. And we asked critical questions that citizens wanted to know. And the way the questions came in wasn't from the people that I selected that you see on TV every day to actually guide the questions. We have the questions to come in from citizens across the city of Atlanta and beyond. It goes back again to the same thing. People are asking and want the same. They just want a good life. But with that good life, they want people that they can respect, people that they feel as though they can trust. That's critical in this industry, in this business, because there are so many different outlets of communications, whether it's social media, whether it's television, whether it's radio, that are not, they're sharing what they believe to be the truth, but they're interpreting it in a way to gain that feedback in order to have you tuned in, because it goes back to numbers. It goes back to dollars. Now, I'm not saying that, for example, and I know I'm referencing you, again, but because of the fact that I do understand that your outlet for communication, when I say your, the television station, is based on citizens and donations and things of that nature. And that's a good thing, because with that, that kind of leads, she needs to make sure her truth is right. Because if it's not right, we as citizens, we're going to say, hey, you're working because we paid you. We're putting our good dollars into your account. So again, with me, going back to your original question, yeah, I can speak that truth not just because of the fact that I am not quote unquote a journalist, but I am a spokesperson. And in reality, everyone in here is a journalist because you all write for some reason. You all have noticed something that you like, you don't like, something that was good, something that wasn't good, whether you verbally shared it, whether you sent an email, whether you sent a text, you're journaling. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, well, again, let me say this here.
Wild, wild west of not everyone is a journalist.
Well, no, but see, you're taking it a little further. I guess we're on two different levels right now. When I say everyone is journaling, that's because of the fact that if you're writing, that don't mean that you are a getting paid, this is my profession, journalist. You can be writing something about something you saw on TV. You can communicate with someone and say, hey, I saw this, but I don't agree with that. Do you follow what I'm saying? I don't know. Do you all,
sure.
overall, do you follow what I'm saying?
Sure.
Exactly. So the majority of you got it. So with that, we are communicating in some form of fashion, and I appreciate your feedback. And that's the great thing, that we do have a choice, we do have a voice, because we are communicating our thoughts about the political arena, we're communicating our thoughts, whether it's about our jobs, or whether it's about something that we saw, read, it could be personal, professional, or whatever the case may be. You are still communicating.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Freda. So Parthiv, thank you for giving us this story earlier, the real story from 2002. So having to run a monthly publication magazine, having to work with the same, counterparts across the nation, even away from the nation, how do you make sure that your magazine is objective, your publication is objective?
Well, one thing is, as a features magazine, we're not into reporting. So there is a bit of non-issue in the sense that a lot of our articles are interviews, and there is not much in terms of debatable topics. That said, of course, we do have editorials, we do have perspectives. As far as how do we ensure objectivity, it's like how Tia said. In the ultimate, there is not a single human enterprise that is a completely unbiased, because, the whole world, we live in a very, very subjective world. So that said, then how do you distinguish yourself from, let's say, propaganda, right? The way you do that is you have to see where the subjectivity is coming from. Is it coming from someone being sold out to a political party or to an ideology or to some special interest? Or is the subjectivity coming from an earnest attempt to interpret a very, very complex world? So that is the difference, as far as that goes. We've been very fortunate, unlike major media houses, we're not answerable to anyone in terms of the content we do, so we don't have monetary swords hanging on our heads. So we're able to, honestly tackle topics, and fortunately we have a very robust advertising in a magazine that supports it, because we've been reasonably fair. Of course, we can't please everyone, we always have, critical letters, but all in all, I think even they realize that, it's a very fine balancing act, I have, on the same editorial, I've heard from, let's say, coming back to Modi, I've heard from Modi haters and I've heard from Modi lovers, both, applauding, one challenging, one applauding, but the thing is, it's a fine line, it's a balancing act, but the thing with us is we're not sold out to any special interests, we're not sold out to any ideologies. That said, personal biases will always come in.
Definitely. Thank you, Parthiv. And so, Nydia, you'll be happy to know that I watched the movie The Post just this week, just before this panel, because I wanted to really learn what it's all about. And what I found out was it was a symbiotic relationship between the whistleblowers, between the journalists, and some of those who had the truth has to come out. Do you think the future is citizen journalists, or do you think the mainstream media would want more citizen journalists to be on their side, collaborating with them in a symbiotic relationship. I wanted to ask you, why did you become a citizen journalist, but you've already answered that in the previous session. So.
Yes, indeed, there is a symbiotic relationship between citizen journalists and the mainstream media, and I am a source for news for the mainstream media. Oftentimes I'll get a request, can we use your footage in our broadcast this evening, and I will always grant permission, and they give me video credit for doing so. As a citizen journalist, my work has been profiled by Atlanta Magazine, by the Associated Press, and by Columbia Journalism Review. I am unembedded, I am independent, and so I can pick and choose what I want to cover. And I can show my videos on YouTube, which have been called Nidios because there's Nidia's videos. I use the hashtag Nidio, NYDEO, on all of my social media, so they're easy to find. But we are crowd-funded. Citizen journalists do get support from viewers and from readers via PayPal. I have a paypal.me/Nydia Tisdale account, and I graciously and gratefully accept contributions and donations just like public broadcasting. So yes, there is a relationship with mainstream media, and actually in my sentencing hearing in December of last year, I had mainstream big name journalists come and testify on my behalf. I had public officials testify, and I also had members of the legal profession testify to the judge when she was handing down my sentence. And so I feel that citizen journalism is very important. It is a resource, and it is helpful to contribute to the conversation, to keep citizens informed. I'm very hyper-local in my coverage, city council, county commission. I'm not really on the national scene, or maybe statewide, mostly North Georgia is what I cover, because it's accessible, and because newsrooms are shrinking so much, they're not able to cover some of these city council meetings. And oftentimes I will send a link to my video of a public meeting and send it to an AJC reporter, and they'll watch it, and they'll write an article about it. And I would do that quite frequently. So I share the information, I want to disseminate it. I have a very small platform, but if a mainstream media journalist picks it up, then that message is forwarded to much more greater numbers. And the mainstream media will retweet me online on Twitter, so I appreciate their help. And after I received the Impact Award from the Atlanta Press Club, I actually asked, could I become a member? And they said, yes, indeed. So I am, in fact, a member of the Atlanta Press Club, which is the second largest press club in the country, second to the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. So citizen journalism, I use that to clarify because I don't want to misrepresent and presume that I am a traditional journalist. It is something fairly new with the advent of the internet and with social media, and that is the role that I play. I am a citizen journalist. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Nydia. That's a big win for you. Great. So Andy, for your question, I was going to ask about competing loyalty, and before that I wanted to hear from the audience, if I may. I suppose, are journalists allowed to express the position that they've taken? So let's take the health care bill, right? You already have formed your opinion, and you have your belief on what you want to happen. But here you are reporting about the health care policy or a bill. Does that reporting have bias because it's written by you, even though you might not show it, but you could share your brother's views who has the same view as you on your Facebook? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Would you agree that he can share that brother's Facebook post because that his brother's views have definite position, yes or no, on a health care bill? Go ahead.
I saw this quote recently on the internet. It said everyone is entitled not just to their opinion, but to their informed opinion. So now you can't just go around saying one thing when it's not true at all. And it's like in the First Amendment, you have freedom of speech, but there has to be some level of context and information that supports it. So I believe that if you have someone like a family member or a friend who's trying to support your argument, if they have a reasonable background for why they're supporting it, rather than just, oh, he's my friend,
I really have to say that if you worked for me as a journalist in my newsroom, you will never be allowed to post that on your Facebook.
So Kaleem, so thank you for that response. Kaleem, quick, and then I want the real Andy to respond as well.
I mean, why would we need to rely on someone external who has no qualifications? I mean, what you're doing.
Because my question is, exactly, the question is, Andy is a healthcare reporter. So if I'm going to read to get information from your health news, Andy, what I'm asking is that going to be biased or are you going to be unbiased reporter?
That's a very good
Because
question.
healthcare is a business.
That's a very good question. I'm going to go two different ways on that, okay? I agree that we all have biases, and as a health journalist, okay, all of us who have done health journalism have written stories about people who couldn't afford insurance because they had a pre-existing condition, right? There are millions of people in this country with pre-existing conditions. And before the Affordable Care Act, they either got charged 2, 3, 4 times what other people did, or they didn't get insurance offered to them at all, okay? The one thing that Obamacare did was to get rid of pre-existing conditions, okay? So all those people could pay the same amount of money as a perfectly healthy person of the same age. Now, did I have a bias? Yes. I liked the fact that it did. Now, do I try to be fair to get the other side in? Yes. I interview people who are opponents of it. But I try to, the main thing I try to do in a sensitive story where I know people could have different opinions is the facts, okay? Get the numbers in there, get the facts in there, okay? There were 50 million uninsured people before the Affordable Care Act. Now there's about 27 million uninsured people. That's a lot of people who gain coverage. That's a fact, okay? Numbers, facts are very important. And as long as you're fair and you get the other side in, I think you can write the story that you want to write.
Very nice. Thank you, Andy. That you did a great job. So I know we started 10 minutes late, so I'm going to give the final thoughts question. You can answer this question or give your final thoughts, 30 seconds each, and before we move to Jay Springs for the closing comments. Gina, can journalists vote, or can they express their political affiliation? You can answer this question or just give your final thoughts for this session.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, actually, one of Bernstein and his former editor in the Washington Post, they used to say that they didn't even vote because they were not, they would take out all that thing about their political position. I worked for CNN, and I remember one of a very dear colleague, Octavia Nassar, being fired for just lamenting the death of a Palestinian leader, and it was not like a really political statement, but she still got fired for that. So I know that as journalists we have to be very careful about what we state, but we're also individuals. So personally, I try very, very hard not to say where my politics are. I actually don't. I have a personal Facebook account and a Facebook professional account. My professional account, I don't publish absolutely anything because I don't want to be seen as biased. Because as a professional that works for a company, I have to understand that my point of view is also reflective into the company that I work for. And it's also reflective of my colleagues because they also work there. So I am very careful about that. I am very careful with my team about, sorry, but you can't publish this. Even actions that are not necessarily into politics, but even personal behavior, I'm extremely careful about those things. Can an independent journalists do it, if they're independent, they can do whatever they want. But if they work for a company, yeah, sure, no, I wouldn't allow it.
Got it, thank you. Because you can either answer that question or final thoughts for the session.
Can you repeat the question again, please?
So the question is, can journalists vote or express their political affiliation?
Actually, it would be good for all, to know. That's the ideal scenario. I'll give you a couple of quick liners. The fake news or the lies would have traveled miles by the time the truth gathers the courage and comes out of the house. This is gonna happen. This is a human psychology because of the Chinese whisper. Second thing is, we are talking about educated. Do we have the right education? So we need to think about highly educated, expensively educated, and does that education involve the moral values and the ethical values or not? You can be a doctor, but the moral part of it is altogether a different part. That's why some scientists create the life-saving drugs and some creates the nuclear bombs used for XYZ purposes. So yes, I think news journalists should have the courage to be open about their affiliations so that when they say out their views, it can be opinions and facts. I guess so. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Vikas. Sonia?
Well, as a novelist fiction writer, I can absolutely vote. And I can absolutely give my opinion on anything and be an activist also. In the last Georgia elections for Congress, I was a district captain for John Ossoff, went out there with my full novelist force and everything. So, this is another perk to being coming from the fiction world. That said, Gina does raise a very important point. It is still a profession. And so I do have on social media very much my personal page, let's say, for instance, for Facebook, and then I have my author page. And I do not, no one, as someone who comes to my books, they are not interested in my political stance on everything or what I eat or what I don't eat or whatever. They are there for, obviously for the books, the content, in that what I can provide them as a writer. That is what I do on my Facebook author page. On my personal page, anyone who knows me, I am a very political person and happily able to do that since I didn't go into pure journalism, where I do understand, you are representing or working for a company. I do think it's a pity that even when you are working for a company, no matter whether it's, journalism or other fields, you have to be careful about what you're saying. But I can understand you're working, as a novelist, I work by myself. For the most part while I'm writing, but when you're working with a team and everyone, perhaps for the greater good of where you're working, it might make sense. And as a closing, thank you so much, Nazira, for having me on. This was a treat to be with these wonderful panelists, and I look forward to more chai and chats, being in the audience and listening to everyone. So thank you so much,
Great, thank
everyone,
you.
for coming out too.
Sure, thank you, Taya.
I think that no matter what your profession, no profession can take away your rights as a citizen. And therefore, I think anyone that works for me, if they want to vote, they should vote. It also depends on what company you're working for. In other words, if you are working for a way left publication or a way right publication, it may be perfectly fine in those newsrooms to express your opinion. In those newsrooms that have a dedication to trying to reflect a balanced view, that has no place. We have enough struggle with our own biases that are inherent. I've worked in journalism since I was 21. I have not told anyone how I vote. I'm looking forward to retirement, because then I will. I'm old-fashioned that way, and I really believe you're expressing a new view, and I think there's a lot of value to this. I think there's a very different line in journalism between, if you will, political opinion and political bias and outrage. And that's very different. If you're in an environment and you are in a place that's been flooded, say New Orleans, and you are seeing thousands of people getting sick, not getting the care they need, we have crossed a line, probably, in journalism, but it's not a line that we have never, ever not crossed. It's just, they used to, believe me, the most famous journalists in the country in 1910, that's what they wrote about, was the outrage of the tenements. But they didn't have a political point of view, they had an outrage. And so it becomes very dicey. But I would say that if you work in, as I said in my newsroom, you may not, one, donate to a political candidate because that can be traced. Anyone can trace. Remember this, anytime you donate to a candidate, it is public record. Therefore, you are not allowed to do that. Number two, you are not allowed to openly express a political opinion on social media. That's just the clean way of dealing with it. If you work as an engineer in my company, have at it. You know, you get to say what you want.
Sure, thank you. So as I was driving my kids to come here, my daughter asked me, Mom, do you know who's the most famous journalist? And I'm like, there are so many, whom are you talking about? She said, Mom, the most famous journalist. And Nila, who's the most famous journalist? Nila, who's the most famous journalist? You just asked me, Rasi. So the answer was J.K. Rowling. I'm like, journalist? So you can see the more younger generation, their thoughts are completely off, right? So, Frida.
Novelists are the new journalists.
Novelists are the new
That's
journalists.
1984.
Yeah, definitely. Frida, go ahead.
Well, on my public page, if you will, in social media, and when I'm out and communicating with different ones professionally, I do not express or say, this is the person that I'm voting for, this is the person that you should vote for. And I'm saying that because, just like I just mentioned to you all, I host on WSB TV2 a panel for all the candidates that ran for mayor. And so I have a relationship in some form or fashion with all of them. I can literally text them right now, you know. So with that, I don't do that. But on my personal page, I may indirectly say something, but I still would not say, you would know if it was a male or a female, you know. But guess what? If you've researched and know things that they have done in the community, I may say something on a very high level. Okay, but professionally, I do not. And that's because of where I am professionally, you know, in the political arena. And thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Frida. Thank you.
So I think I'll go with the final thoughts part of it. The voting part for us is very simple. You know, I mean, we see ourselves more as a community voice, you know, as opposed to pure journalism. So I've actually gone out and even endorsed presidential candidates. So it's very transparent. But as far as the final thoughts, you know, one thing that's been on my mind lately a lot that, you know, in this country, you know, we may have all kind of threats, you know, nuclear threats or various different things, but I feel these days, you know, the propaganda is of a huge, huge concern. It has the potential to bring the country down. So under those circumstances, it's very, very important for each of us to be very smart consumers of media. And in doing so, the common fallacy is, you know, people lump all media in one box, saying, okay, well, Fox may be right-wing, but hey, so then CNN is left-wing, so they're all the same, right? No, wrong, wrong. And the reason it's wrong is look at the people who are the influencers. I'm just taking CNN and Fox as a representative sample of rest of the media. But look at who are the ones who are shaping the opinions in each case. On one side, you have mostly professional journalists. Now, professional journalists, at least by intent, they have a commitment to integrity, they have a commitment to research, they have a commitment to rigor and facts. On the flip side, who are the opinion makers, let's say on Fox? The big opinion shapers on Fox are Hannity, and, talking heads. Rush Limbaugh may not be on Fox, but Limbaugh and Hannity, these guys are talking heads. They have a tremendous influence on shaping public opinion, and yet the irony is these guys are self-admitted entertainers. I don't know if you all know, but at one time or another, these guys have actually said that, hey, we are entertainers, don't take us seriously, and at the same time, they're influencing, views. So it's very important to realize that professional journalists, have a commitment to a code of ethics, just like the doctors, have the Hippocratic Oath, the Society of Professional Journalists, they have a creed. And being so important, I printed it out. I'd like to read it, so that people realize that there is a difference. It's not just a matter of right-wing or left-wing bias. So the journalistic creed that professional journalists go by, I'm not sure on a daily basis how many actually, consider that, but it's there. Members of the Society of Professional Journalists believe that public enlightenment is the forerunner of justice and the foundation of democracy. The duty of the journalist is to further those ends by seeking truth and providing a fair and comprehensive account of events and issues. Now the thing is, in the real world, this may not pan out perfectly, but at least there is a stated, commitment to it. As opposed to on the other side, they call themselves entertainers, so there is a complete difference. How we consume our news is very important. I feel that most people, and especially the youngsters these days, should commit to some mainstream media, that they believe, whether it's NPR or New York Times or whatever, but to ensure that, they have a real world view of things, because otherwise they're just relying on social media feeds from friends,
Sure, definitely. And that goes back to what Vikas was saying earlier. How does the mainstream media compete with the influencers, the entertainers?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Nydia, 30 seconds each.
As a citizen journalist, I'm a citizen advocate, and I encourage all citizens to exercise their precious right to vote because not all countries allow their citizens to do so. And I video recorded last year for the 6th congressional district race 3 different campaign debates where all 18 candidates were on the stage, and I gave them equal coverage. I profiled their opening and closing statements and posted them on my blog. I posted the entire debate. And it was very tedious and time-consuming, but quite frankly, I was an undecided voter. And so I decided if I don't know who I want to vote for, then others probably don't know yet either, because a lot of these are new faces. And so I wanted to share that information, but I don't endorse a candidate or a party. I let the voter decide. An informed voter can make up his own mind or her mind. I don't need to inform them of that. And this year, I likewise filmed multiple gubernatorial debates, and some of my footage from one debate in particular was used by 2 of the candidates on social media, and it was the basis of the very first question in the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk debate series to one of the candidates. And he had to explain why he said one thing at one forum and another thing at another forum. And he explained that he misspoke. And someone asked me, Nydia, did you feel guilty for publishing that video? I said, guilty? Why in the world would I feel guilty? I was just there documenting what was being said on stage by a announced candidate to the public who's running for public office. I'm just providing that information to voters so that they can make an informed decision at the ballot box. And so, yes, absolutely, everyone should cast their ballot.
Thank you. Andy?
All right, so I definitely vote, right? I don't contribute to anybody. I don't post like for a candidate or anything like that. I don't march in the streets, but I can tell you that a bunch of former colleagues of mine who are retired, they are definitely out there. They are thrilled to
I
be
know
able to
someone else
march.
who's waiting to retire.
Right, they're thrilled to be able to march and campaign and all that sort of stuff. So it's, but while I am a practicing journalist, I just feel like I just can't get into that.
Do you have a Facebook page? I didn't find you on Facebook.
Well, it is. It's Georgia Health News.
Yeah, I got that one, but
Yeah.
you don't have a personal.
I do have a personal one, but I don't
Got it.
like any candidates or anything.
Can I just say one
Sure.
I know I don't have my microphone, but I do want to say Andy appears, Andy's on our network a lot, and he's an amazing journalist. Amazing. And he can really explain health issues and the complexity of the business in a way like I've never heard. So he is an amazing journalist.
Thank you. So before we go for break, Jay, why don't you come forward? Jay Springs, you must have seen the bio coming up, is doing the final comments, the closing comments before we leave. And Jay, do you want to come to the stage, or I think people can see you from right there? Okay, awesome. Thank you. It's on.
I think this microphone is on.
Yes.
The young lady I was sitting beside, when Nazira said the F word with 4 letters, she began to blush, and so did I, but you couldn't tell it because of my melanin. So it really concerned me because I thought this was a PG-13 event. I want to congratulate each of the panelists that are sitting here and the amount of information that they've shared, their backgrounds, the work that they do in the industry that has paid me handsomely over the past few years. And for Partha, I'm a marketing consultant. I sell advertising. Marketing consultants in the real world are salespeople, so we have to actually go out and sell the ads that are running in his advertising and in his magazine. But these individuals behind me are the ones that are on the front lines, including the fiction writer. I read fiction. And they're the ones that tell the story, whether it's fake news or whether it's true news. So I'd like to ask if you will give them a round of applause for the work that they do. Today is the best day of my life, and I thank you for allowing me for a few moments to be a part of your life as I take a moment to reflect on the tremendous amount of data that was shared on today and the amazing education I have received that really lets me know that in some aspects I am out of touch. And probably some of you in here are also. I am J. Francis Springs, a marketing consultant for WIGO 1570 AM and the Atlanta Voice newspaper. And it is an honor to be among so many brilliant individuals that are involved in some area of communications. Now, I'm going to speak from an evolution and historic standpoint. I'm not as brilliant as all of these folk behind me, so I'm going to be approaching it from another direction. And I also want to thank the Honorable Dr. Nazira Dawood, whom I met a few years ago and had an occasion to interview, for inviting me to share some thoughts on a closing of this session, for which I now have an affliction of information overload. So check me out before I get in the car to make sure that I'm not too dizzy. There's also someone here that I really adore and admire before I make any further comments, and that's Miss Anurupa Arora, who surprised me by showing up for this event. Someone that lives in this area, but her family has been very involved in the entrepreneurial aspect of bringing resources and business to our community. So Annie, thank you for coming out and supporting me. Now, before I go any further, I have an admission that I need to make, and it's a secret that I've been keeping from my family for a number of years, and some of you may also have had the same experience. So here goes. I never learned how to program a VCR. And I know that a lot of you didn't either. This has not been the best of weeks for the new generation of media. One day, after Facebook suffered through the worst 24-hour loss in Wall Street history, Twitter stock dropped 20% in one day, and after having the 1 million active users that were Russian bots and Nazi sympathizers lost, even Netflix had a bit of discouraging, less than stellar results. But on the bright side, no one is suffering alone. While I am on the subject of Facebook, which I think I heard Andy say he doesn't have a Facebook page, I do not have a Facebook page either, so don't try to friend me. I chose not to have one because there's just too much drama associated with it. Yeah, I'm really sure, man. One of my creditors may try to find me. And I don't want any friends from 50 years ago contacting me that I don't recognize. I had a flip phone not long ago, and it was working quite well for me. I didn't have a problem. I could call you up, talk to you, and hang up. And then one of my sons said, "Dad, you got to get with it. You're walking around here in a suit trying to be cute, and a flip phone does not help your image. So I got a dumb phone that takes pictures, and I've learned how to text. Now he tells me not to write a letter every time I send him a message, and he now calls me a senior millennial." For just a few minutes, I want to share some developments from Tesla to trending. And I am not talking about the Tesla car produced by Elon Musk, but the inventor Nikola Tesla, that was the futurist best known for his contributions to AC, which is alternating current, not air conditioning, and in the late 1800s predicted wireless communications, and coming forward today to what everyone is checking out on the internet or trending. I want to give you a kind of a graphic that I brought along because some of you are young. Does anyone recognize this? Okay. Now, I'm not going to ask you to tell what it is. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. This is called a test pattern. And this was what was on TV at the end of the day when the TV stations went off the air. There were only 3 in my hometown. And when they went off the air at night, they played the national anthem, which made me feel so patriotic. So I had to salute every time I'd get ready to go to bed. But radio stations, like television stations today, are doing some amazing things. And I got lost here somewhere. Yeah, there were only 3 channels. Okay. Let me find this other page. It's in here somewhere. We also had party line telephones. Everybody knows about a party line. Some families that could afford a telephone had a designated number of rings that let you know someone was calling you, but the party line was shared by a group of neighbors on the same line who would listen to each other's telephone calls, or if someone called them, they would tie up the telephone until someone asked them to get off. It created a lot of disputes between neighbors that didn't like each other. This is also considered in terms today as what we call a landline. And you were charged by the minute for long distance, and some of your long-lost relatives like to call, collect, when they didn't want to run up their phone bill and they needed money to be sent by a telegram from a telegraph machine at Western Union, which had offices all over the country. Now, since I only have a few minutes, let me leap forward. So we now have the internet, which has unlimited capacity. And practically everywhere you look, there is someone communicating on any number of platforms that you can load onto your cell phone, such as Skype, Periscope, Instagram, Twitter. The list is endless. A few months ago, one of my clients wanted me to do a live remote through my radio station. And so my staff loaded up our huge speakers and amplifiers and 100 feet of wire so that we could look impressive. When we got set up and started broadcasting, we realized there was a 12-year-old kid that was providing music that had an iPad and a couple of wireless speakers that was at the same location doing a live remote, streaming online to his radio station and streaming video on YouTube. I am out of touch. But if you still want to be on the radio and not advertise in Parby's paper, call me. If you want my number, I'll leave that for you today. And don't be surprised if I beam myself to your location with my teleportation device that I borrowed from Star Trek. So in closing, just one bit of trivia for those of you that don't know. There is still one Blockbuster in this country, but it's in Oregon. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we're not done yet, but I would like to thank the panelists for taking their time this evening to be with us. And we're going to go grab some coffee, 5 minutes, and then we'll be back to hear from two new generation radio personalities or social media managers to see what the future of journalism holds. So please go ahead and grab your snacks and refreshments, and we'll be back. And Anilji, yes?
If I didn't ask the question, it would be me.
Okay, just one question, because I sort of incorporated the questions already asked by registrants into what I had asked. Sure, go ahead.
Any one of you can answer that question that's bothering me. In the days that you despair about news, when you want to shut yourself, the statement, if you would comment on it, no news is within law. No news, you're misinformed. Uninformed. With news, you're misinformed.
Anyone?
Yeah, he's right.
Yes, go ahead.
It's like a catch-22 situation. So that itself is the phrase, For your, there has to be a concept of, let's say, the meditation and the spiritual part where you want to be not connected to the world. Because otherwise, if you're speaking to somebody and telling about something, that itself is a news. So are you talking about the news industry, which we say professional journalism or the citizen journalism or the social media journalism? Or we are talking about not even passing any information? So
Personal life, yeah.
of the personal life also.
Awesome, thank you.
Honestly, I think just as a human, you have a responsibility. Once you're born, you have the responsibility to educate yourself, to read, to get informed. Choose the way that you want to be informed, either by the regular news, by newspapers, by books, but it is a responsibility. You cannot just cut yourself out of the world like
Great,
that.
thank you.
One just last, final thing which came to my mind is very important from the historical perspective. The world would not move ahead without the news being documented, because news is about the history also. What is happening today is being documented for tomorrow. So what we were seeing on the walls now in the archaeological surveys and all, so that's the information being passed.
I do hear what you're saying. We as people we as citizens, as people, as readers are being bombarded with news, bad news, 24 hours a day. Used to be you would just have news of your village or your town or your country. Now we are getting news internationally from all over the world, and it's always some bad news. So I understand that. I do think for myself personally, and I think hopefully we all practice this, there's a time to shut off your news sources. Go out in the garden, play with your, do things, rejuvenate. You don't have to be online or listening to the news 24 hours a day or every waking moment. You need to be alert enough and strong enough emotionally and mentally to be able to give it your 100% when you do connect, but there is a time to disconnect, and it's very important to do that because honestly, a lot of us are getting very burnt out by everything we have to juggle and handle and all the fake and true and fact and everything else that we're constantly having to sift through.
Thank you. Thank you. So Anilji, we're going to stop because we're sort of out of time. But we 5 minutes quickly, and then we'll get back the new generation journalists back on stage. Thank you so much. So we have had, if y'all can gather back for a few more minutes, we have the second session, and then we can chat for some more time. Kaleem, Aparna, give us 5 to 7 more minutes. So we have Hannah right to me, Hannah Daniel on the right, and you'll see her bio going up on the PowerPoint. And also we have Neha Negandhi. So Neha she is a radio personality, and she does host a radio show, and also she is a writer. So she's done a lot of articles for many magazines, and Hannah is also an expert on social media. She's a social media manager, but also she's a GSU student, right? Vikas, if we can get you back, Kaiser Ji, Andy, Nidia. So the reason I brought both of them on stage, and Anjali couldn't make it today because of last minute unseen for circumstances. But Neha, let me ask you this question. When you were in high school, had you already chosen your career path?
Wow, that's taking me way back. First of all, thank you all so much. Thank you, Nazira, for inviting me here for this panel. But in high school, no, I didn't know what I wanted to do. In college, though, I will tell you this story. In college, I hosted my own radio show. I went to Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina, and I hosted a radio show that started at 12 o'clock midnight, and they went on until 5 a.m. This is way, way back in the day. And this is my college radio station you had to go and physically pick the records from the record rack and, put them on, and it was that. It wasn't like there wasn't CDs and all that back then. And I remember going, who has seen that movie Pitch Perfect? Has anyone seen that movie Pitch Perfect? And do you remember that scene where the main character, Anna Kendrick, goes into the radio station and she helps to pick out the station? It was really old. That scene reminded me of my radio station. That's what it was, except it was me doing it by myself. And I remember doing it, and I remember loving every minute of it. Going back there, flipping through those dusty records and putting on, I could play whatever I wanted to back then. And I remember flipping on the audio aisle, the audio sign, and it said, on, radio on, and I was speaking to the people. And I just remember that feeling when I flipped that switch and it said radio on, and I was telling people stories, and I was telling them what was going on, and I was telling them what it was like to be a college student. I could pretty much say what I wanted to say. I remember that sensation, and I knew I wanted to carry that feeling forward into many, many years after that. So then I graduated college, and again, there was really no internet back then when I graduated college. I'm really dating myself. But there was no sense of internet back then, and so I really didn't know what to do with that, with my radio profession. So it kind of went away after that, and I worked for many years. I worked for Turner Broadcasting for many years, and worked for Starbucks, corporate, and my career has went several years. But I just wanted to say I knew what I wanted to do at a very young age, which was college, but it took me many, many years to finally figure out exactly how to do it. So that was my story.
Thank you, Neha. So Hannah, tell me, what is the best career advice you've received?
The best career advice I've received, honestly, is to really focus on who you want to be, and focus on your truths, and focus on telling what you believe is the truth. So.
And did you follow through it?
So far I have. I haven't graduated yet, so I'm going to keep trying to follow it and see where it comes out.
Very nice. So Neha, what kind of news do you think people like to hear or see?
I think news nowadays, and listening to all these panelists up here, it's so hard now to figure out what is news and what is not news. And I know we've had this discussion now for 2 hours already. But I think what's important to people is what's relevant to them, right? What strikes a chord to their own sense of reality. And we see reality through many lenses, as has been discussed here before, whether that's through your gender lens, whether that's through your religious lens, whether that's through just being, a busy person lens, whatever that is. But whatever that your news is the fact what strikes a chord with you. And it could be the fact that you're interested in health, right? I mean, that's really important to a lot of people. Or it could be really politics, or it could be whatever it is. But I think news is whatever strikes a chord to you. And I will tell you this, Napoleon Bonaparte said, I'd rather face 1,000 bayonets than 4 newspapers. So imagine that, right? Right? That's the truth. That's what Napoleon Bonaparte said that many centuries ago. So people find news that's important and relevant to them in their daily reality. And even it could be an hourly reality. That's how busy our lives have become.
So Hannah, I know you're into social media as well. And how do you measure the impact of your work?
I would say working for social media is something that I didn't expect to go into when I decided to become a mass communications student. And social media is something that nobody can stay away from. Whether we want to or not, it's coming. And as a millennial myself, I am always stereotyped as like the most selfish generation, but it's gonna happen. Social media is gonna take over, and you either get on board or you don't. With social media, I really focus my reach and how many people I'm connecting with. That's how I really see myself progressing in social media.
What would you say to those parents or those who are interested in journalism as a career now or in the future?
I would say cover all your bases. Be able to work in digital media, be able to work in print media. Look at advertising, all kinds of, every mass communications platform, I would say get involved. You'll be doing a lot of stuff. And journalism, I have a photography business on the side, just so that I can offer that one day, because you never know when you're gonna need it.
What is the best advice you can give to those who want to do journalism as their career?
Read a lot, look at a lot, really study what it is that's important to you and why that is important to you. I talk to a lot of people who have asked me over the course of the years, why is it that I do what I do? And it's because I love to tell stories. I love to listen to stories, and I love people. And all of that resonates for me through radio medium. But the most important thing I can say to anybody that wants to do something is do that. Read a lot, see a lot, and then find a way to do it. I don't think nowadays there's not a no as an answer. But there is so much out there that you have to find your own way and your own course in how to do it.
Thank you so much for your time today and for the expert opinion or expertise that you provided today. If someone asked me which news channel that I watched a lot, I wasn't going to ask you both this, but I would say GPB Kids Programming. So Taya, I thank you for the GPB and all the kids programs that has sort of raised my kids. And I would like to end with what Mr. Rogers had said from The World According to Mr. Rogers. He said, when I was a boy, I would see scary things in the news. My mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I'm always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in this world. With that, thank you so much for coming today and spending this evening with us. Thank you.
Thank you.